Good morning, everyone. Are we ready or are we streaming? Ready to go?
Yeah,
Joe's
go.
good.
I'm sorry, Joe. Sorry. We'll call the meeting to order of the Development Committee of March 2nd, 2021. I'm calling this meeting to order. A physical quorum of the members is physically present, but at this time I'll entertain a motion to permit those not physically present due to the coronavirus to participate by video or teleconference.
So moved. Seconded.
Motion and a second. We have a physical quorum. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And those not with us will be able to participate, I think, as soon as public transit is over with. Moving on to roll call, please.
Member Krajewski,
Aye, here.
Member Covert,
Here, sorry.
Member Garcia,
Here.
Member Ozog, Member Rutledge,
Here.
Chair Tornatori.
Here, and we have a quorum. I have nothing under chairman's remarks. Do we have any public comment this morning?
Yes, we have two.
Okay.
The first one is from Antonia Petrello. And she writes, I wanted to reiterate my concerns as they were first conveyed at the zoning hearing with Empire Properties Group LLC on February 17th, 2021. As a resident of Garden Avenue, my family and neighbors have been negatively impacted by Affinity Auto Sales as represented by Empire Properties and their parking of cars within the current zoning setbacks. The variance that was requested would allow Affinity to continue to park their cars in such a way that it completely fills their parking lots and blocks the view at an already dangerous intersection. The current parking situation as it stands in violation of the zoning makes it so that customers, employees, and delivery trucks park and use Garden Avenue. This often blocks the road we residents use to enter and exit our dead-end street and impacts the view to safely, exit at Lake Street. It has also meant that there are many cars are test-driven at speeds beyond Garden Avenue's limit and at the risk of residents. Additionally, the large delivery trucks then travel south on Garden to be able to turn around and head back north to exit at Lake Street. Large vehicles are not intended for our street. If this variance were to be allowed, then these practices will continue because there is no other place for customers to park or deliveries to be made other than on Garden Avenue itself. As a resident, I am wholly against this variation for all the reasons stated above. Thank you for your time. The next comment is from Irvin Schramm. My name is Irv Schramm and I reside at 17W350 Shield Drive in Willowbrook. I was under the understanding that today's meeting would be on Zoom and just found out that it isn't, and unfortunately I am unable to attend in person. At that meeting with the zoning, I was told that they would consider giving me a year to keep the shed until I could build a new one. That was changed now due to us using it for our chickens and the 25-foot rule that I was unaware of. At this time, I would ask if we could still have that consideration of 1 year if we got rid of the chickens. The shed has been in this location for over 30 years and is not hurting anyone, and none of my neighbors object to its location. I think that a 1-year extension is a reasonable request to allow me adequate time to plan and prepare a suitable site on my property to construct a new shed. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the public comment portion of the meeting. We will move on to approval of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of Tuesday, February 16th, 2021.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Vice Chair Garcia, seconded by Member Rutledge. Any comments, questions, additions, corrections, or deletions? Hearing none, seeing none, all those in favor of the minutes as submitted, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed to the minutes are approved. Moving on to regulatory services. I'll entertain a motion to approve DCO 17-21 Ordinance C 2058 SRAM. This is the zoning hearing officer's recommendation to deny a conditional use to allow an existing shed to remain less than 10 feet from the interior side property line where the shed has existed for at least 5 years. This was a denial by the zoning hearing officer, but all of our motions are made in the affirmative. So I'll entertain a motion to approve this petition.
Second.
Motion by member Krajewski, seconded by member Rutledge. Any questions, comments? Member Krajewski.
Yeah, I saw in here, it said, at least 5 years that he just mentioned on his public comment. It's been there for 30 years. So has he been there that long? Is the shed there before he got there?
No, he built it. He
built
was
it?
there.
Okay, how did it come about, the issue? If it's been there for 30 years, it's been,
He applied for some other permit on his property, and as part of that permit, we do a site inspection.
Okay.
And we did a site inspection and found that the shed was built without a permit.
okay, so the shed was built 30 years ago without the permit.
Correct.
And it looks like nobody had any comments. I was reading, all the staff, everything was no comments. And it's in the middle of nowhere almost. There's nothing enforced or behind there. And is it the result of the chicken being in there?
If this were just the shed, the first issue, and this has been going on for about 2 years, the first issue is that the shed was in a floodplain when we found it.
Okay.
So he couldn't get a permit for the shed itself because of the floodplain issues. That's been resolved. But as part of this public hearing process, Mr. Schramm indicated that he has chickens, and he has chickens in this shed. So this is really a chicken coop, and he hasn't asked for any
You got
zoning.
2 of them, right? Is that what it is?
Right, and he hasn't, we just, as you know, we have a new chicken ordinance that allows for up to 5 chickens, but the chicken coop has to be at least 25 feet away from the side property line, and he didn't ask for any of that. So just as a shed, arguably it would have been okay, but because of the chicken issue, that's why the ZHO recommended denial.
Because I know it's in the middle of nowhere, and Darien, which is relatively close, to just approved their chicken coops in the backyard, potential stuff. And there's really nothing around him. I'm behind him, to the west of him, it's in the far back of his lot, and the lot next to him is super large too, and there's nothing in the back there. And so he just wants a delay to get his 2 chickens out, so he wants to do a new shed.
Well,
And he's just asking for a year.
Well, one of the things that we indicated at the ZHO is that we'd be willing to give them a year to sort of downsize this shed and relocate it. At one point, he had indicated that he was going to relocate the shed, get it out of the floodplain. But the hearing officer is more than willing to give him time to get rid of the chickens and to remove this. But in terms of the technical zoning relief, can't prove it because of the chicken issue now. If he gets rid of the chickens and then comes back and wants to sort of reinstate this as just a shed, I have no doubt that the zoning hearing officer would recommend approval.
Approval to allow it, or approval to have a year?
Approval to allow it.
So the thing, it was there 30 years, and it could have been approved with the variance,
But for the chickens.
but for 2 chickens that are sitting inside there. That have, I don't see why there's.
It's a combination of 2 things, technical and practical. He originally had indicated it was a shed, and then when the chickens came in, he hasn't asked for a variation to allow a chicken coop to be located closer than 5 feet from the property line. So he has that opportunity to do that.
But had he not said at the hearing he's got 2 chickens in there, they would have granted the variance.
Well, no, they would have granted the conditional use. Yes.
Conditional use stuff.
In all likelihood, yes. So it's the technical issue with the chickens that creates the problem here.
So if we were to vote this down, then does he have the right to come back and ask for the variance at a later date for the
Yes.
chickens? So he could redo this and come back for the variance for the chickens at that
Correct.
point.
Correct.
Come back for conditional use.
Conditional, yeah.
Conditional
conditional
use,
use.
sorry.
And a variation now, because just so we're clear, we have this conditional use in the books to deal with situations like this, where someone has a building on their property that's been there for many, many years, more than 5 years.
Right.
And the reason we have the 5-year time period is that chances are, if something's been on your property for at least 5 years and the county doesn't know about it, that it's not having an impact on your neighbors. No neighbors are calling and saying, hey, we've got a problem here. So that's where the 5-year time period comes in. And so it's basically to deal with a problem that we've never been able to deal with before. When you grant a variation, in theory, a variation runs with the land. So if we grant a variation to a shed, there's really no way to get that shed off the property if it falls down. And effectively, if we grant the variation, if the shed falls down and they want to put a new shed up, they can put the new shed up pursuant to the variation. A conditional use allows the county to be able to say, look, this zoning relief is only for this building, only for you. And if it does get torn down or is blown down, you can rebuild it, but meet the new code or meet the existing code. So it basically allows us to keep the status quo. The problem with this status quo is that the chicken ordinance is a new ordinance within the last year. So in order to have chickens in this building, he'd have to ask for a variation from the side yard setback. And the likelihood of getting a variation from a brand new code, at least in Mr. Schramm's opinion, would have been very, very low. So once again, the zoning hearing officer is now dealing with a chicken coop as opposed to a shed that's been there for 30 years. And that's really the issue here. But having said all of that, he could certainly come back at a later date. He could even withdraw this petition and refile to ask for a chicken coop within 25 feet of the side yard setback. He still has that opportunity.
Was that explained to him?
Yes.
It was.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Chairman Torrentore, I just would like to have the record reflect I'm here now.
You have already reflected that record, member Ozak. We're glad to have you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Can we as a committee just put this conditional use on there for a chicken coop? Make a recommendation or an amendment?
Well,
Versus sending him back to go through this whole
the
process?
problem is that the relief he's asked for is a conditional use for an existing structure. So he has the wrong zoning relief request. And we have.
I know what he put in, he wanted to get the variation for the shed. He's got two issues. That he needs, he can get. He would have got, you said, would have probably got that if he didn't have 2 chickens inside there. He can come back to us and ask for the conditional use to have the chicken coop, the 2 chickens in this thing within 25 feet of the side yard. Can we just amend this here?
No, and the reason for that is that we haven't held a public hearing relative to granting a chicken coop.
So that was-
25
okay.
feet. So that's the reason technically he'd have to go back for a public hearing.
Okay.
Okay. Any other further questions, comments? Okay, we have a motion to approve the ordinance which was denied by the zoning hearing officer. A aye vote would be to overturn the zoning hearing officer's recommendation. A no vote would be to sustain it. Call the roll, please.
Member Krajewski,
Aye.
Member Colbert,
No.
Member Garcia,
No.
Member Ozog,
No?
Member Rutledge,
Aye.
Chair Torrentore.
No,
The chickens.
I know. I know you're the chicken lady, so we gotta take it up for you. So the motion to approve is denied. Moving on to item B, I'll entertain a motion to approve DCO 18-21 Ordinance C 2082 Simmons. This is zoning hearing officer's recommendation to deny a variation to allow a commercial trailer on residential property and a variation to allow a trailer in front of the front wall of a home. Or motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion by member Rutledge. Is there a second?
Second, Ozog?
Second by member Ozak. Any questions, discussions, comments on this? Member Rutledge.
I do. Thank you, Chairman. And I kind of asked Paul before the meeting, but for the record, I was curious if this person could, so there'd be no problem with him parking a car in that space. But it's the fact that it's a commercial vehicle. So 2 proposed solutions I would say is, can he park that trailer? Or, pull it into the garage and kind of, negate any issue with that. I understand the neighbor had no problem with him parking the trailer there.
One neighbor did not object. That's correct.
Okay. And then the last thing is, I've been on this petitioner side of the table before, and I kind of always bristle at that. Well, they didn't prove a hardship. He's asking for the variation. Do they really have to reiterate that, this is I just think that that's, I don't know, condescending almost.
So I'll take the latter first. In terms of when we put in there, they didn't prove a hardship, that's more of a technical reason to deny. And so it allows the zoning hearing officer, the zoning board of appeals, and ultimately the county board to be able to say, here's the reason for the rejection. They did not prove hardship, which is a standard of proof for any zoning relief. So it is a technical requirement for them to do. In terms of the reason the hearing officer said he didn't prove a hardship is that in this particular case, the petitioner made it clear that he is seeking to keep a commercial piece of equipment, the trailer, on the property. The county doesn't allow for commercial vehicles or commercial use of residential property. And then secondly, he was asking to keep that commercial piece of equipment in front of the front wall of the house. And we don't even allow for residential trailers that would haul dirt bikes or ski-doos or snowmobiles. We don't even allow those to be stored in front of the front wall of the house. So in this situation, there's two issues that the petitioner has. One is he's indicated that he is running a business out of his home, and as part of that business, he needs commercial equipment to be able to do that. That was the first issue. And the second issue was he indicated that he wouldn't put it inside the house, that he needed to store it out in the front because of the size of it. So those were the two issues that caused the zoning hearing officer to say this is just simply not an acceptable use for the property or location on the property.
But he would be allowed to, let's say, park a Ford 350 on his property that had a logo on the side door. Is that right?
Yes, so our code says that you're entitled to have 6 passenger vehicles on your property. And a passenger vehicle is a vehicle that is below 8,000 pounds gross vehicle weight rating. The reason for that weight rating is that if you want to go 8,000 pounds or higher, you have to get a specific type of license plate from the state of Illinois. So it's easy for us to determine what's a commercial versus a domestic vehicle based on the license plate. We allow that one of those 6 passenger vehicles can be a vehicle used for commercial purposes off-site. So for instance, a van or a pickup truck that might have lettering on it for a business off-site. We acknowledge that contractors do have off-site office locations, but they use that vehicle to come back and forth to home. So we've acknowledged that a plumbing contractor or an electrical contractor probably has a van or has a pickup truck with ladder racks on it, things like that, and even lettering. We understand that that's basically when it's at home, that's his passenger vehicle, but he uses it to come to and from work. So that type of vehicle would be allowed, yes.
Chairman Tornatore, I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you, Paul.
If Sheila's done. Oh, Member
I
Rutley, are you okay? Okay, thanks. Really quick question. Obviously, we have to follow the guidelines, you know, and petitioner has to be compliant with the codes. Is he, I'm assuming he is aware why he's not compliant, but did he have a response to that, or is there a response letter or something proving that he would be legally compliant, or any follow-up on this?
So he's been given a violation notice, and the violation process and adjudication process, he has been made aware that there are other options available. And one of those options is he can seek zoning relief. So that's what he has sought. And as part of the presentation that he submitted, he's indicated that this is what he wants to do. He wants to continue to run his business from his home. And as part of running that business from his home, he needs to have this piece of equipment in order to store his wares inside that piece of equipment. In terms of the rejection by the zoning hearing officer, the property owner is aware of that, but there has been no response relative to the ZHO zoning hearing officer's recommendation to deny.
Okay, thank you.
Well, do we know how long this has been going on?
We don't. It's at least been going on for a year from the time that we issued the violation notice. Typically, with our code enforcement process, we don't really pursue violations. We don't have a lot of staff to be able to do that. We really rely on neighbors calling us up. In addition, as I mentioned, that we issue violation notices because someone has come in for a permit or something.
My second question: how did we get to the violation?
This we believe we typically don't give out information about where we got the complaint, but we believe this is a local complaint from the community. We're not going to say
we got a complaint, which caused us to go out there and see what
exactly.
was that. Okay.
And typically, just the way generally code enforcement works is that the unincorporated community is very forgiving of their neighbors. Likely the reason we got a complaint is that the neighborhood, something happens, something manifests itself to cause the neighborhood to say, this has gone too far, I have to do something about it. And that's usually how we get most of our complaints from citizens.
Any further questions, comments?
Paul, excuse me,
Go ahead, Rosa.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Paul, just a quick aside question. What is the RV parking situation in front of residences?
So the Well, this is a separate issue from this property owner. This property owner does have a recreational vehicle, a pop-up RV in the front of its property as well. Recreational vehicles, pop-up tents, the typical four-wheel RVs are permitted on residential properties, provided that they are located behind the front wall of the house and in what's called the buildable area, meaning they have to meet all the setback requirements, and they have to be on hard surface as well. So they can either be on concrete or asphalt, or they can have pads underneath the four tires of concrete. But they are permitted. They have to be behind the front wall of the house.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve this. Again, this was denied at the zoning hearing officers, by the zoning hearing officer. Roll call, please.
Member
I'm
Purdue.
sorry, Sam, can we clarify? So a no vote is,
A no vote is sustaining the hearing officer's recommendation. It would be denying the motion.
Member Purdue.
No.
Member Colbert.
No.
Member Garcia.
No.
Member Ozog.
No?
Member Rutledge.
yes.
Chair Tornatori.
No, and the motion fails. Moving on to item C, I will entertain a motion to approve DCO 19-21, ordinance Z 2094, Empire Property Group LLC. The zoning hearing officer's recommendation to deny variation to allow parking of vehicles within the 40 feet and 35-foot setback from Lake Street and Garden Avenue respectively. Again, the zoning hearing officer recommended denial. The motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by member Rutledge, seconded by Vice Chair Garcia. Paul, you want to bring us up to speed? Because my recollection is correct. We've been down this road before. Have we not?
We have, this is a piece of property on Garden and Lake Street in unincorporated Bloomingdale, Roselle area. This piece of property, we've had violation notices on this for several years, to the point where the previous property owner just sold it to get out from underneath the violation notice, and the new property owner sort of bought a violation. This piece of property is part of the Lake Street corridor, for which we currently have a local technical assistance planning grant to try and deal with issues like this along the corridor. This particular property is a car dealership where they are parking not only in the required front setbacks and the corner side yard setbacks, but they're in some instances they are parking out into the public right of way. That has caused us to issue multiple violation notices to the property owner. This is an attempt to get out from underneath the violation. We have had multiple complaints from the neighborhood, which further to the south of this business are several single-family homes where people have complained about and you heard it in one of the comments earlier, that the property owner of this business is using their street to test cars. In addition, we have received multiple complaints from the local township highway commissioner, who's responsible for this stretch of Garden Avenue, of not being able to shovel the street because the cars are in the way, and also the cars damaging his roadway because it is a local residential street. The street itself, the cross section of the street is approximately 66 feet wide for the right of way, but the street itself is about 20 feet wide. So it's a very narrow street. It really doesn't need to be improved because it's a dead end street where there aren't too many single family homes on it. But using the street for commercial purposes it's been problematic for the township and the neighbors who live around here. So once again, this is an attempt to get out from a violation that's been a violation for at least on this particular owner of last 2.5 years. And they're using this zoning request to try and get out from the violation.
And Paul, before this owner took over, how many years prior was this violation?
Probably 10 to 15 years. And once again, the previous owner finally decided that they were just, instead of coming to compliance, they just sold the property.
Any questions, comments, Vice Chair Garcia?
I drove by this property yesterday and I noticed that the cars, because you're right, they're in the right of way almost. They're almost on the street actually at some point. And I know the Garden Drive exits are completely blocked by cars. I mean, that's gotta be a safety issue in itself. Okay, so everything about this is in violation.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. Again, remembering that the zoning hearing officer did deny this, so a no vote is a sustaining of the zoning hearing officer's recommendation. Roll call, please.
Member Krajewski,
No.
Member Colbert,
No.
Member Garcia,
No.
Member Ozark,
No.
Member Rutledge,
No,
Chair Torrance.
No, and the motion failed. Moving on to item D, I'll entertain a motion to approve DCO 20-21, ordinance C-2096, Baumgartner Land Venture LLC. This is a zoning hearing officer's recommendation to approve a variation to reduce the side yard setback from 20 feet to approximately 10 feet for a new sign, and a variation to reduce the front yard setback from 15 feet to approximately 1 foot for a new sign. Is there a motion to approve this? By someone.
So moved.
Motion by member Krajewski,
Second, Ozog.
second by member Ozak. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I have a question.
Member Ozak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I assume that the sign that they want to either replace or add is within sign code.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
The prevailing issue here is that the North Aurora Road is being widened. And as a result, where their existing sign is, will have to go away because it will otherwise be in the right of way. So they're having to move the sign because of the right of way expansion.
So there's their hardship. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, hearing none, seeing none. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. One, please, yeah, one. Moving on to the last item, I'll entertain a motion to approve DCO 21-21, ordinance C-21-002. Swagowski. This is a zoning hearing officer's recommendation to approve a conditional use to increase the total square footage of a detached accessory building
So moved, Colbert.
permitted 650 square feet to approximately 992 feet for a new detached garage.
second, Rutledge.
A motion and a second. Any questions, comments, concerns? Vice Chair Garcia.
A quick question. I think I read in there that the shed, it's just got a conditional use for 5 years. Is that correct in there? Did I read that in there?
Yes. So what's happened? Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
And this is one of those situations where the existing shed didn't have a permit. And so in order to get that approved, the ZHO officer is allowing it to stay for 5 years.
Okay.
And the idea is that after 5 years, they likely will be able to remove it, or they can come back in for additional.
Okay, so if you can't come back at that point in time,
Absolutely,
they
yes.
want. Okay. All right, thanks.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second regarding the zoning hearing officer's recommendation to approve. Hearing no further comments, all those in favor of the motion to approve, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, and the motion carries. Do we have any old business? Member Krajewski.
Yeah, just real quick, I had been talking for well over a year about our permitting or code reviews, outsourcing them, and the cost, the flat rate fees that we were charging under the old system. And we finally went out for RFP, and we went for an hourly rate. And it's been 6 months now, and I had talked to Nick a couple weeks ago about looking internally at any cost savings. And based on the hourly rate that we referred to under the old flat rate fee, the costs have gone down, well over 50%, like 60% per month. So we've been saving the residents on the pass-throughs well over 60% on the cost savings by going to that hourly rate with the cap. So I know I was fighting for that for a year and a half, but I asked for a summary of doing it for 6 months, and so it's well over a 50% savings to our residents pass through those inspections now that they're doing it at an hourly rate versus the flat fee that was based on whatever the square footage of the property.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for the advocacy on behalf of the taxpayers. Again, the 50% reduction. Anything further under old business? Any new business? New business. Hearing none, seeing no new business. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all.